We continue our series looking at Clemson for each and every position with a focus on the newcomers, and now we're at tight end. And this is a position where Clemson actually has to replace a starter with Jake Briningstool headed off to the NFL. Briningstool was second on the team with 49 receptions. He was second on the team with 7 receiving touchdowns. And he had 530 receiving yards, obviously leading all tight ends, and 4th on the team there. So those are some big numbers to replace. It wasn't so long ago that Clemson didn't have much production from tight end, and Briningstool was very impactful. He was inconsistent, to say the least. He'd have games where he'd really go off. Then he'd have other games where he would hardly make a catch. But overall, he was an extremely productive tight end as a receiver. But I think Clemson is well-positioned to replace him despite that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think first and foremost is the strength at wide receiver. And if you've watched the other videos, I just did the wide receiver one, and Clemson is absolutely loaded with wide receiver. 3 starters who might be the best starting trio. Some real depth behind them, bringing in Tristan Smith to give them even more depth. So I think wide receiver is going to have a lot of answers there. But the other part of that is right here, and it's Olsen Patt-Henry. So Olsen Patt-Henry returns. And he was, according to PFF, slightly better than Jake Briningstool. That doesn't really tell the whole story, though. He was not better in terms of being a receiving threat. His PFF grade is, in fact, a hair lower than Jake Briningstool there. And he doesn't have the 6'6" height or sort of the occasional dynamic, just wow plays that Briningstool offered. But he was perfectly good as a wide receiver. And he was much better in run blocking. He had an 11-point better score by PFF in run blocking. Clemson tried to get him in more of those situations, kind of use Briningstool more to run routes to play to their strengths a little bit. But I think given how good the wide receiver group is, it might be more important for Clemson to be better at tight end in terms of blocking, helping the offensive line, helping the run game. Maybe for the tight end position this year with such a strength at wide receiver now, that might be more important. So I think getting Olsen Patt-Henry back, I presume he'll be the starter. You might be just as good off, although in a very, very different looking way at tight end. And I think Olsen Patt-Henry, he had 308 snaps last year on offense. You can see that number double, getting closer to Briningstool, who had 709. And maybe he doesn't get to the 530 receiving yards that Briningstool had. In fact, I don't think he does. But could he triple his numbers where he had 121? Can he get to 363? I think that's a reasonable target. If he does that and then also provides better blocking and you get a little bit more depth behind him, then I think you're pretty happy. So let's look at some of this depth behind him. So let's say that Olsen Patt-Henry does in fact start. Well, you bring back now 4th-year Josh Sapp. And Sapp was not good in run blocking last year. He had actually the lowest grade. Not a whole lot of snaps there, so maybe not a lot to go off of. He had 111 and 2. He was graded poorly in run blocking, so that's got to improve. But as a receiving threat, he was pretty good, and we saw it, a couple different times, a couple different big plays. But I think Josh Sapp as a receiver is good. So you got Olsen Patt-Henry, who's kind of balanced. You have Josh Sapp, good receiving option. If he could become a good blocker, a little bit more well-rounded. He's not as big as Briningstool, who was 240 at 6'6". He's not as big as Olsen Patt-Henry, who was 240 at 6'3". He's only maybe 6'1", 225. But if he could be a good blocker, then you've got a great duo there. The other guy to look at here is Banks Pope. He's now a redshirt senior. He is 250 pounds. Clemson didn't use him a ton last year. He was the star of the spring game where he was a great receiving threat there. But then throughout the season, he only had 31 snaps on offense, and 24 of those were in run blocking situations. He was Clemson's best run blocking tight end by far, although very small sample size. But given his size, given his weight at 250, being the most stout, kind of hefty tight end in terms of build, he could be kind of a Cannon Smith. I don't even know if Cannon Smith is the best example, but he could be that run blocking tight end that Clemson uses in situational spots. So he was a walk-on last year, and in other kind of editions of this video for different positions, I haven't put walk-ons on here, but Banks Pope can really make an impact. And now he'll be on scholarship, as all the players on the team will be on scholarship, assuming this house case goes through as we expect. There'll be 105 guys total, no walk-ons, Everyone is on scholarship. The difference just being how much they get in revenue sharing. So he may not get a lot in revenue sharing, but he'll get that full scholarship. And as a redshirt senior, I kind of love that, right? So I think he's a guy who can contribute, and maybe he doesn't get hundreds and hundreds of snaps, but he can go from maybe the 34 he got last year to something like the 111 that Josh Sapp got last year. Then Josh Sapp goes up to maybe 200, 250, 300, and Olsen Patt-Henry goes up to maybe 600 or even approaching the 700 that Briningstool got. One guy who can kind of throw a wrench into all this is Christian Betancur. He's a guy who I was really, really high on coming out of high school, a big-time recruit out of Illinois. He was a top 100 player according to Rivals. He was number 116 on 247. He had offers from Ohio State, Penn State, among other big ones. But his high school numbers were just prolific. 231 career receptions in high school, 3,800 yards, over 50 touchdowns. I mean, the guy was outstanding as a receiver in high school, but I went back and kind of re-listened to my original video about him when he first committed. He was split out wide all the time. So almost like a wide receiver, really, or slot receiver even. So makes sense that really for all Clemson tight ends, there's a big learning curve. It's a lot more complicated in our scheme, or just in college, tight end's a pretty complicated position. But for someone who's often kind of split out wide, it makes even more sense you need a time. But I think the tools, the size, he's 6'4", 245 pounds. I've checked with a couple people who are a little bit closer to the program, and I've heard nothing but great things about him. He's a guy who I could see being a great receiving threat and more than decent at inline blocking. I think he just needed that time. He's coming off a redshirt year. I think eventually he's going to be a great starter at Clemson. I'm really high on him. Was high on him initially. Nothing's changed that. So I think we start seeing him contribute, and maybe he eventually becomes the second string guy. I don't know, but I do think we see him get more than 20 or 30 snaps. I think he could be a guy who contributes more and more at minimum in garbage time. So I'm excited about him. And then Logan Brooking, 3-star, son of a former Atlanta Falcon and Georgia Tech grad. He, despite being a 3-star, he has some good offers, and all we're hearing out of tape is out of camp, is really, really good stuff about Logan Brooking. And I did go back and watch his film. He's out of Savannah, and there's plenty of inline blocking there. Kind of the opposite of Betancur. Plenty of blocking, plenty of playing, right in line, not split out wide, and he looks good. He also plenty of good routes as a receiver, but not the production, not even comparable production to Briningstool. Only 6 career touchdowns in his entire high school career, so not really a prolific pass catcher. But I think that skill is there. Would be really surprised if he didn't redshirt this first year, but could see him being a contributor down the line. So excited about him as well. But I think this year you look and you see Patt-Henry could be a really well-rounded, good starter for Clemson. Different than Briningstool, maybe not quite as many receiving yards, but could be a very good receiver. And given the options they already have a wide receiver, I think that's fine. I think for this team and this roster this year, not to say he's better than Briningstool, but he might be a better fit for this 2025 roster than Briningstool would have been, given they have such good wide receiver options and could use the help in blocking. Sapp is already a good receiver, so he can give you that. And if he can improve as a blocker, he could be really good. Banks Pope, he's going to give you some blocking. He gives you some depth. And then Betancur gives you that kind of unlimited upside. So with those 4 guys, despite losing 530 yards from Briningstool departing, I feel really good about this tight end room. Dixon also leaving. He's going to he's going to be moving to defensive end, but he didn't really have a impact on the field last year, so that's why I didn't talk about him much. But with those 4 guys right there, I feel really good. Brooking coming in, I'm excited about him, but hopefully there's no injury, so he can just redshirt. And then with that, I think this is a really, really strong room. I think they could more than do that. So I think this is a group you should feel really good about. Hey, thanks for watching this. Check out the accompanying articles that go with these. And don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you're enjoying these. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy interacting with you guys, so don't forget to do that. And as always, go Tigers.